And we are green for another episode of the Red Star Roundtable. It's Mike and Will, and today we have a very, very exciting topic today. I know my co host is probably like a kid in a candy store because we're going to be talking about narrative gaming. And we were just, before the show started, we were just talking, Will, about usually we don't talk about 40K unless we're dunking on it, right? So,
It has gotten to that point for
yeah,
sure.
but this is one of, I think, shining bright spots. And we'll talk about, well, of course, we'll get into the meat of it. But I know that you're very excited. This is a very apropos topic for you. I have not participated much in the narrative side of 40K other than your crazy successful narrative campaign that was cut short via COVID, excuse me. But of course, we'll talk about that later because we always start the show with hobby talk, my man. What have you been doing?
Mostly just painting. I've been pretty fortunate this year. I started that hobby day,
Right.
challenge
Like
thing that
like
Roman
Roman?
was doing,
Yeah.
and Roman's been killing it. So I'm way far behind on that, compared to him. But I'm up to 72, 73 days of doing something constantly every day. And so this week I've been just kind of trying to finish up projects. Like I've been painting demons. I painted that Bloodthirster. I'm just about finished up a bunch of Cornhounds, and our boy Kenneth that comes on the show a lot. I was able to get some spawn from him, so I've been working on spawn to go in my Word Bearers army. Kind of just remodeling them and getting them ready to go. But I think that as good as my momentum's been on the hobby, I think it's going to be slowing down a bit. Mike and I was talking before the show. My wife and I are buying a house, so if you can't tell, a lot of my stuff's starting to go in boxes, so I'm gonna be limited on hobby time in the near future. But so far, it's been going pretty good.
Yeah, I remember when I moved into this house first, it was like I took extra care of the computers and my models. You know what I mean? Like those didn't get packed up with the furniture. Those got put in the car in the back seat, where I could keep an eye on them. And they were the first thing to move into the house, like in a safe corner. It's gonna
Well,
be
that's why I'm starting now, so I don't have to just throw everything into boxes last minute. I'm in here like sorting everything and wrapping everything up. So that's going to take up a lot of my hobby time in the near future. But the good thing is, and Mike and I we were talking about this in the not the next stream, but the stream after. I'm going to be streaming from my new hobby room, so
there you
that'll
go.
be a good. It'll be worth it.
Dude, I've got an like off. It was cool because I got to decorate it. I've got a couple of shelves and all my Lehman Russes are on it. Then I got a bunch of bookshelves with all my works and Captain America and number one poster. Poster that's the cover or Spider-Man number one. It's freaking. You get to like make like a little nerd shack, and there's nothing better.
That's exactly what's going to happen. I see it already. Well, and I've been saving, like, when you buy like 40K boxes and you get those little cardboard things that they put in there
Totally,
just so your models don't get messed up. I've
totally.
been saving all of those, and the wife is going to frame them. And we've already been going to IKEA, going look at these display cases where I can put like my Warhound Titans and stuff like
Right.
that in there, and my armies that like especially like my Death Guard because I've been painting my ass off trying to get them done, and it'd be real nice to have them in a big glass case in the game room once they are finished.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Those, yeah, I think, like you said, from IKEA, and I think Caesar was selling one not too long ago on Red Star, the display shelves like that. Like, have you seen Aaron that Aaron has? Because his are all
Yeah.
just immaculately painted, and it looks just so badass in a room. You know what I mean? That especially when it's lit and stuff, you can't beat it. I know you're gonna laugh at this, but I have bought the last until the new models come out, of course. Marvel Crisis Protocol. I sprayed them today. I got Winter Soldier, who's one of my favorite three threats in the game, and Vision, who I doubt I'll ever run. But I wanted the Winter Soldier. So I got them, put them together, and as soon as I paint them up, I think until Sin comes out, because I really want a good Cabal team. Um, until she comes out, I don't know that I want any other models. Of course, they all look fantastic, but I've got no interest in X Men or X Force or Brotherhood of Mutants or anything like that. So Everything I have for Crisis Protocol is good to go. I've got the mat. I've got everything painted. 2 sets of terrain painted. So I can't wait. I'm very anxiously waiting to get back in the stores and to throw down on some of that. And Bucky will find a way to get in every affiliation that I can cram him into because he's awesome.
But it's funny you mentioned Vision because a buddy of mine that's in my Sunday hobby group, he did Vision in the all white.
The white Vision, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like that. I wouldn't have thought to do that, but it worked. It looked good.
I wanted to do at the beginning. I know Josh did like the brown Wolverine naturally, right? Because he looks so badass. But I wanted to do it as like they looked like on the cards. I ended up doing the comic versions of the cards, but there was definitely a time where it's like give them an alternate color scheme. I chose not to.
I wish I was brave like that when it comes to like painting models and to be able to like break out and do these like really badass like different things. I'm not that adventurous, unfortunately.
Well, it's funny you say that because I just so I used the Rust-Oleum, the 2X primer spray paint. It's amazing for models. I love it. I use the gray matte, and it's just the paint sticks on those immaculately. So when I base coated Vision and Winter Soldier, and then I started my season 2 of Blood Bowl. So my black orcs, I'm actually going to do like kind of like a pale orc, a white orcs, because I have an orc team that has the green skins. So I wanted a different one to differentiate these gobos and these as a different team. So I'm thinking about doing an alternate color scheme like they're like winter and stuff like that. See if I can get some Space Wolf pelts to slap on them or something like that. Speaking of Space Wolves, Will, for the last few days I've been scouring the internet. I watched a battle report, and the Space Wolves. There was Jesus. Unfortunately, I can't remember who it is, guys. I apologize, but there is a. I'm gonna take up time on the podcast to unprofessionally look this up. Tabletop Titans is a YouTube channel. They do battle reports, and the battle reports are so-so. I'm not a big fan of the production. It's very slick production, but they don't do the handheld camera. They have stationary cameras, like one where you can see the whole board and above it also, but they don't do the handheld like Mini Wargaming and Tabletop Tactics do, where you can really get down and see. But what they do is they do these Q&As afterwards. So I watched a little bit of it. You kind of make out what's going on. And then I watched the Q&A afterwards. So I watched the Space Wolves bat rep, and then I watched the Q&A afterwards. Dude, in the Space Wolves, they were just their heroic intervention. He was playing orcs, and their heroic intervention. What's goddamn 12-inch or 6-inch? I think it's 6 inches.
6-inch.
6-inch. I mean, and they had with fights first strats, make you fight last strats. They got these mega knobs that would get in, would never get to fight, and they would just get wrecked. And I was like, and everything that was around it. So they're in packs, and I just thought it was fluffy. Also, I'm sitting there empathetic of the orc guy, going, that's bullshit. Also, the orcs haven't gotten their codex yet. That's something I need to. It is what it is, but it was pretty insane. And there's two ways you can look at that. Either that's crazy, or that the orcs, the way I'm choosing to, at least tonight, because I don't want to dunk on 40K tonight. Tonight's a celebration of 40K. But so I don't dunk on it. I'm choosing to look at this as, well, the orcs don't have their 9th edition codex, and the Space Wolves do. But that was insane. So I'm not a fan of Space Marines. I don't like them. But I'm like, man, it would be really cool to have Assault Intercessor, Space Marines, lots of Space Marine Terminators, and of course their dope, unique Dreadnoughts, Murderfang, Bjorn. And then I'm like, man, let's start pricing this out. And I'm like, what am I doing, man? What am I doing?
They do have a new combat box. It'll be easy if you do want to play Space Wolves.
But that one isn't. That one still suffers from this could be any Space Marine.
All the Space Marine stuff is going to be as generic as possible to get as many people to buy it.
Right, but if you didn't do the Space Wolves, you could have put the Space Wolves Terminators, you know what I mean, in there, because those are Space Wolfy.
Max says, when using the 2X primer, ever find that it coats too thick and you lose some of the detail on the models?
You know what? So, excellent question, Max. The answer is when I first started doing it, I started giving it more space, more distance than I normally would, and then doing, I mean, everybody should do quick sprays. That pretty much alleviates. But the first time I used it, yeah, I had to use unofficial sponsor of a Red Star Roundtable, LA Totally Awesome, to get the primer off of some Crisis Protocol models because I did overspray some.
When I get into the new space, I need to have like in the background, like LA Awesome,
Yep,
like
a banner,
like jugs of it just sitting there.
It is, but so to answer your point, I spray my Marvel Crisis Protocol with the 2X primer, right? And Crisis Protocol miniatures are not raised even remotely. The detail is not raised from the model even remotely as far as GW's lines. Like GW's details really come out of the model. And Marvel Crisis Protocol maybe does half of that, as if that makes any sense. Will, does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So, and I've still been able to keep the detail when painting after priming Crisis Protocol. So I just did the Blood Bowl guys. I can still see all of the detail. It is a little bit thicker, but it's not. You don't lose any detail, I don't think.
Well, in Marvel Crisis Protocol's defense, and Atomic Mass Games' defense, they are babies in this industry compared to Games Workshop, who's been at this for 40 plus years. So they're now they're coming to their own, but it's definitely apples and oranges comparing them. But GW's had 40 something years of figuring out what works when producing a model to get the most definition and the most detail.
Right.
So not to shit on Atomic Mass Games by any means, but it's apples and oranges. But back to what we were talking about, because we're talking about narrative gaming today. Space Wolves is such a great army for that. I played Space Wolves for a long time. I recently got rid of them only because I'm the type of guy that if I have an army that sits on a shelf, at that point for 2 years, what am I keeping it for other than sentimental attachment?
And that's the potential to start something new.
Right, but it wasn't even so much about the money. It was just I'm limited on space, and I just kind of felt, I don't want to hold on an army just because I'm sentimental about it, and I feel bad that it's not getting played. And if I can sell it, then maybe those models will see the table with somebody else.
Right.
So, but that army specifically, as far as narrative gaming, is just rife with potential. There's so much there to not just create your own fluff and your own characters, but also to see that character brought out in the models, because you can add so much different detail to the models. And I'm the type of nerd that I would add bits to my models. Like if a model did something really cool in a game, like it killed like this, Chaos Jump Pack Lord or Tyrannid person or whatever, then I would like make little trinkets and then glue them onto the model. Like those were his like little war trophies as they went on.
Right.
And I thought the cool thing about that was after a while, because, we talked about this before, but my background is in D&D. So the role-playing aspect of it is what got me into that. And my characters, through just the games I would play with you or Anthony or any of the other guys, my heroes would start taking on their own stories. Mm-hmm. And that's how I looked at them. Even if it wasn't the most optimal list, like I had a Wolf Lord, or not a Wolf Lord, they're chaplains. Come on, help me out. Wolf Priest.
Yeah,
I had a Wolf Priest that I always ran with this little fluffy Blood Claws squad. And they did great for me every game. And all look on paper, they should not have. They should not have done as well as they did, but I just kind of felt like they would come up with these little stories throughout my games, and I'm like, I'm going to do this because that's what I feel that they would do, even though it might cost me my game or I may not get the objective. But if
Right.
it works, it's going to be super cool.
And that's a great segue into what we're talking about today. But the reason, listen, there's problems. I'm not a Space Marine player, and if you're a Space Marine player, you're probably like, well, there's no problem. There's no problem here. But as a non-Space Marine player and a non-3-up armor save player without a 9th edition codex, I'm just salty, right? It's just, that's all it is, man. But I will tell you, I've always thought of the Space Marines, the ones with the personality are the Space Wolves. They got the models with the personality. They've got the uniqueness. They look cool. Now, I know that you're going to have to buy a couple of the Firstborn, the Blood Claws box, or I think they're just called Wolf Pack, because you can make, shoot, I forget the name. You can make Blood Claws or Grey Hunters. That's right. But they come with, you want the bits, is what I'm saying. You want the bits. So you can bit up the Primaris. And of course, there's a whole industry around wolfing up Primaris on the third-party market. So there's a lot of pelts and all sorts of stuff that they can make them look awesome, because having basically Space Wolf Blue intercessors right next to Blood Claws, and they look plain Jane. My point is that they have that personality, and you can give them that personality, which is why of all the IG, they'll always be IG to me, but Astra Mill, guys, I use the 80s action heroes, the insane, super jacked, don't even wear flak jacket. If it bleeds, it can die. Straight out of Predator, Catachans. It's all about personality, and it makes it stand out, and it makes it more fun for me. And I've got a Deathcore army that I am assembling, purchasing, but I've got hundreds of Catachan, all sorts of vehicles. So I think that I'm going to, and I did it with the Sonora campaign, but I'm excited to see it played narratively in the new 9th edition, because I look at 9th edition right now, and I have trepidation as Astra Mill player, where the game is centered around take and hold. I don't have the tools in my army to take things and to hold things. You know what I mean? Bully grins can only get you so far.
Right.
So that's my biggest concern with 9th. But when you're playing narrative, that's not the point. I remember I played a Sonora camp mission, and let me just tell the story, and then will you tell the audience what Sonora is? But basically, it was a hold the line, and he had to get his HQ. He had like X turns to get his HQ 6 inches from my deployment line, and I made that son of a bitch pay for every inch he came in. It was the perfect Astra Militarum setup. And he was Astra Militarum as well, but he had a Inquisitor and a retinue in a Chimera. And, I mean, that thing, he kept it behind cover because it was getting shelled. I mean, it was just everything that was coming out shelling. And he could bring back guys, and then they'd start from the back, and they can keep coming. You know what I mean? But he had to get his Warlord, and he was able to, because I was not able to kill the guy, on the last turn, sending everything I had into his Inquisitor. But that was dope. And I was like, you know what that is? That's a scenario that we're playing and we're having fun. And it's not the mechanics of 9th, which I just don't see how my army fits in. My Codex hasn't come out, but I don't see how standard 9th edition works for me. But I still love 40K, so maybe the narrative will work for me. Is what I'm saying.
It's fairly early in the edition, and this is pretty common. I've been through 5 or 6 edition changes over the years, and this is a fairly common thing. Unfortunately, because of what we're all dealing with COVID and then the whole Brexit thing, it's making it a little bit slower than we see in previous editions. But hopefully that'll change. They got another preview coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, I hope it's. For dear God, it's going to be about the Drukhari, right? Clearly.
No.
Oh,
so Drukhari's already. So what's going to be for Saturday is their preview or their roadmap for what's coming after.
Okay, finally, because
So they're going to let us know what codexes is going to be coming out the next 2 or 3. Hopefully, that should be what's going on. We could sit here and speculate all day, but unfortunately, we just don't know what's going to be coming up after the Drukhari. But I think the Drukhari is going to be the book that's going to tell us what things are going to look like for non-Space Marine looking armies.
Yeah.
Because Death Guard came out, and I like the Codex. It's not my Death Guard, but it's still a good Codex. But they're still a 3+ power armor Space Marine army.
Right.
And Necrons, they're not much different.
Right.
So Drukhari is going to be the true test, in my opinion. But I've liked what I've seen so far. It's just coming out a little bit slow for me.
Yeah, and I mean, all excuses. I have, I guess empathy is not the right word. Sympathy for the situation, but it's absurd in its execution because I would just like to know. I would just like to know.
Sure.
Yeah, I would just like to know. You know what I mean? And then, you're playing a weird scenario too with the releases, and it's like the later you are, the better off you are, almost. You know what I mean? But at the same time, you want your codex. But
of course,
yeah.
But it is what it is.
Yeah.
We'll see what's going to happen. I'm still trying to be somewhat positive about the whole thing, but my biggest thing is so far with everything that's been coming out in the codexes is for Crusade. I've really liked.
Yes, and yeah, can you kind of? So each codex comes with Crusade rules, and this is
right.
This is now youth. This is new.
So first, I think we need to define what is narrative gaming, because most players are going to play match play. It's all about Mike. You and I are going to play a game, and we want things to be as fair and balanced as possible. Not saying it's perfect, but fair as balanced as possible. So we're going to use points. We're going to start out at the same level, and it's about who can come out on top. So that's match play. If you like match play, then I wish you many fat babies. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not crapping on match play. Narrative play is about the story.
Right.
It's not about the outcome. And I think that's an important distinction. And you saw that in some of the missions we did in the Sonora campaign. It's about telling the story with your game. Now, of course, everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to have fun. That's the nature of us as the human experience trying to play a game. But narrative gaming is specifically about telling the story. And a lot of your narrative games, you may not be able to win. There's a specific mission in there where you have to assassinate the HQ of the other people's army, and a lot of people were like, well, that's too hard. And not to get too much into politics, but if we could have assassinated Hitler, at the beginning of the war, we wouldn't have fought for as long as we did. So, it's not supposed to be easy to assassinate the leader of the other army. So yeah, sometimes they will be stacked against you, but I think the beauty of that is if you are able to pull it off, that's a badass story.
Right.
If everything lines up just right and you were able to succeed in that mission and you were able to kill that person's Wolf Lord or their IG commander or, Farsight or whatever the case may be, that's a story that you're going to tell. How many times have we sat around with the Sonora campaign and we talked about the games that we had?
Oh, yeah.
And that was badass when you did that one thing, Mike.
And you know what my favorite part is? There's two things about the narrative or your successful campaign that we ran. It's people weren't playing, oh, I'm playing Ultramarines. They're like, I'm playing the Ultramarines 7th Company. You know what I mean? Or, Mike, what are you playing? I'm not playing Astra Militarum Subfaction Catechins. I'm playing Astra Militarum, the 343rd armored regiment. You know what I mean? And it's just that's so much cooler. And then the number one rule, not the number one rule priority, but the first rule is no special characters, because that guy is gonna be. You're not killing Farsight. You're gonna try to kill Major so and so who's leading this regiment at the time, who hopefully, if he stays alive, will become a full-fledged colonel with, You know what I mean? At the end.
Absolutely, and that was my thought process behind that, because as a Death Guard player, Typhus's story has already been told.
Right.
Everybody knows who Typhus is, but they don't know who your little regiment commander for your tiny little Catachin army is, or like I mentioned earlier about my Wolf Priest. Everybody knows who Auric is, but here's this random, junior Wolf Priest that I created, and by the end, he had just as much of an epic story as Ulrich did in the end. So what we're talking about when we're talking about the Sonora campaign, it was something we did on a whim, and there was only 5 or 6 of us in the beginning that we talked about this. We wanted to do this campaign, and we didn't want to do just one-off games. We wanted to have a narrative campaign where things were linked, where whatever happened in this game affects the next game and things carry over. And so we used the old chapter approved rules where you build your own heroes. Now, that was not a balanced system in any way, shape, or form, and anybody could come in there and abuse the hell out of that system. But what we saw was people trying to come up with reasons for why they took certain abilities. So you get to build your own heroes, or you get 4 different abilities, and you can go, I'm going to choose a stab bump, and you can't fire Overwatch at me because I'm a Raven Guard player and I'm sneaking through the shadows, and I'm going to increase my movement because I'm fast, things like that. But it was people that really wanted to define their hero. And then this one, we only got one. So it wasn't like in Crusade where you can have multiple heroes. You just got one. And for us, you had to play that hero in every game, regardless. Right. Because that was who their story was about. And it was all about the narrative of that hero. But we didn't see people trying to abuse the system. I mean, you could take and just go, well, I'm going to give myself +1 toughness every bump just so I'm unkillable. You didn't see people doing that. And I thought that was super cool. So we started the campaign. I thought there was only going to be 5 or 6 of us. And the first time, that's pretty much all that showed up. But we created a Facebook page specifically for the campaign. And people would post their own fluff that they would write for their characters. They would post things like, here's this, astropathic transmission about what's going on, or whatever. And that, to me, was the coolest thing about the campaign. Now, playing the games was fine and dandy and fun, and I enjoyed getting out with everybody. But seeing how much people were getting into that campaign and writing the stuff outside of it. Mike, you were doing the
postcards,
the ad, like the postcards, like come to sunny Sonora for your.
And it was a paradise. Yeah, the first one was a paradise, and then after Chaos started whooping the Imperium's butt, the second one had bullet holes in it, and then like the planet was on fire.
And to me, that was the coolest thing in the world, and that Mike and I talked before the broadcast, and up until that point, I've been playing 40K for some 15 years at this point, something like that, and I kind of felt that it was growing stale, and I didn't really like where it was going. I was kind of getting bored and kind of getting out of it. But when we started that Sonora campaign, man, I was all in. And I got to play this ongoing campaign for 6 weeks with some of my best friends and tell these cool stories, and I think one of the coolest things was toward the end, we had so many people playing that there was not enough table space at the shop that we were playing. We were playing at Court of Gamers here off of 281, and there were so many people there. We had people in a queue to wait for tables to open up to play their games.
Yeah, I started bringing other games.
I would have never expected.
Yeah, people were bringing. I brought Dice Throne to play while we waited. You brought a game that you could play while you wait to play 40K, and when the table opened up, then you got to go and play your week game.
The last game that we did it before we had to shut down because of COVID, we had 26 people show up.
Yeah.
And that is, and I don't know, if you never had any experience doing narrative things, in my experience, that's unheard of. But people would see us talking about it in the group, on the Red Star group on Facebook, and then they would go to the page, and then they would see Mike's flyers and people's stories, and people would write up their bat reps from the stories in a narrative form instead of just saying, I played this by turn 2, my guy died. They did it as a narrative, and it was just a super cool experience. And like I said, in 15 years of playing this game, I'd never had anything like that. But now we're in the 9th edition.
Right.
And 9th edition has added Crusade into the core game. So
Right.
This is not like a supplement that came out. This is the core. This is everybody's got this in their rule book, not you went out and bought the special thing, or and if you didn't, you never saw it.
So those of us that are not as well versed, the main rule book, remember when 8th came out, there was 3 ways to play, and they were like open play, match play, and narrative play. And 8th edition relied heavily on campaign books to give you the narrative play. Okay, so the 9th edition rule book, is there Crusade rules in it, like how to play Crusade, like baseline Crusade?
Yeah.
Okay.
The core rules for Crusade is in the core, the big rule book.
Okay.
And as of right now, it's the only place to get it. So everybody should have those rules to play Crusade if you've bought the book to play the game.
Now, one of the things is, I think Aaron mentioned that the book that's coming out, that they'd confirmed that the Crusade core rules are going to be in the new supplement that's about to come out. We don't know for sure because there's been no unboxings, but he had made mention that he saw that somewhere at least.
Yeah, I think they mentioned that in the thing. I would be leery about that, and I only say
that doesn't sound like GW. Yeah.
But they said in the Pariah Nexus, the core rules
Exactly.
was going to be in that for Kill Team, and it wasn't. Not trying to shit on the company, not trying to start an argument or whatever, but it's one of those, we'll wait and see. So Crusade is in the core rule book for the thing, and Crusade is specifically meant for narrative gaming. It's not for match play. If you're looking for points and equivocal things, this is not the game for you.
Right.
And this is in the core rule book. But what they also did is that they have come up in every codex that's been released for 9th edition. There are Crusade rules in the codex that are specific to those armies. So, for instance, some of the things that you can do with that is there's a thing in there for requisitioning to becoming a dreadnought. If you're a hero and you've taken 2 battle scars, then you're like, you know what? I'm going to buy myself a dreadnought because my body's so messed up, I can't recover. I'm now going to be turned into this dreadnought. And things like that for me is super cool for telling that story of, your Wolf Priest or your Catachan a commander, what may become of him once it comes up. And they've included this, and these are all very fluff based. I know I keep talking about Space Marines, but that's all that's really come out so far. Ravenwing, not Ravenwing. The Dark Angels has rules in there to become Ravenwing or Deathwing. So you could start out as just this regular Chud hero or unit, and then as you play the games, you could be brought into the inner circle or the outer circle. And that to me is a super cool progression. I mean, rules wise, does it do much? Not really, but it's cool.
Well, if you become part of the inner circle, then that does according to that codex, that does a freaking ton.
Yeah. But so what ends up happening is, for instance, if you're an intercessor squad or a sold intercessor squad or whatever, and you kill a fallen unit in the game, and there are rules for that. You're like, well, what if they don't take fallen? There's a thing in there that if you get, basically you collect intel points, and once you get to a certain amount, you go, Mike, here is your fallen model. You get to include this in your army for free. So you're playing your IG, and now you get this free fallen model or cipher, and you get to play it for free with all its rules. It doesn't count against you and your army or whatever. And then my job is to kill that unit. And
right.
If I do kill Cypher or that fallen unit with my my intercessor squad, then I can pay the points, and then now make them into either a Ravenwing unit or a Deathwing unit. So they can go from intercessor to an Outrider squad for Ravenwing, or they can become a Blade Guard squad for Deathwing.
That's bad. Now, you cash in requisition points, right? So in the
You
back of
get
the
requisition points for playing and winning games.
so the back of the codex has uh, these excuse me like stratagems to cash these in. That's where you get these things at, right?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and they've been doing like all sorts of narrative things. Necrons brought some stuff out so they could actually give their stuff Destroyer virus. So if you wanted to have a Necron dynasty and they were all being infected by the Destroyer virus, even if they're not Destroyer units, you could have a Cryptek that is now infected with the Destroyer virus. Death Guard has a thing in there where if you kill a unit or you have a level advancement, because in this system you get experience for doing things in the game. So by killing units, by their versions of secondaries, you can actually advance. If you get so many experience, you go up a level and you can roll and potentially get +1 movement or +1 ballistic skill or whatever the case may be. Well, there's a mechanic in there for Death Guard specifically where your heroes can become demon princes.
Right. Ascension.
So
yeah.
So the boon table is no longer a stratagem in the codex, where before it was a stratagem, you roll on the boon table, you get the boon. Now it's a crusade thing, and you roll, and then you get the boon, and you get the boon permanently. That adds to your stat line for the rest of the time that guy's in crusade until you get rid of him or he's dead. But with that, it's one of those things where if you get two boons that are the exact same thing, you become a chaos spawn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So your character that's been super badass throughout the whole campaign, you're like, oh yeah, +1 attack, that's super awesome. And then you roll again on the next time you get an advancement from your god, and it's also +1 attack. You're spawn. Don't pass go, don't collect $200.
Right. You're just a gibbering demon. Yeah.
Right. And if you get 2 advancements, and by the time you get to be able to add your third, instead of rolling on the boon table, you can then make that character, your Lord Contagion or whatever, into a demon prince instead. So you get requisition points in Crusade. You can never have more than 5 at any time. And then you spend those to increase how big your army is, to remove battle scars from your heroes, because they're like, oh, I got messed up in the last battle, and now I'm at -1 movement because I got a busted leg. You can spend one of your requisition points to heal that guy, and then make him to remove that -1 to his movement, so he's back whole. But then you can also do other things with the requisition points to be like, I've been running this intercessor squad, and I've been using the assault version of the bolters, and I really don't like it. I'm going to resupply them, spend 1 requisition point, and I'm going to give them all stalker bolters. Or if you have a Lord Contagion and you're like, I've been using the axe, and the axe isn't good, I can spend a requisition point to give him a new piece of war gear, as long as it's on his profile, and right. I can give him the scythe instead.
That's freaking badass.
And this goes on throughout the whole campaign. So you can be like, I've been using the scythe doesn't work, I'm going to go back to that.
Right.
Some of the other things about Crusade that's different is that you don't get Warlord traits just for playing the game. You have to use your requisition points to buy Warlord traits.
Right. Because you're going to start off with just a generic leader.
Right.
So, yeah, you got to have to build him.
Yeah.
Whereas match play, you just assign it, yeah.
Right, and I think that's and Relics too. You don't just be like, here's my lowly chud. I'm gonna give him a relic and a warlord trait because he's badass because he's leading my army. You have to do that with your requisition points. And so you and I play, and typically you get 1 requisition point for playing and winning a game, but there are other ways to get 2 instead, so on and so forth. But that's how you increase your army. So you start out at 50 power. That's it. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, power level, that's whatever. Man, since I've been playing power level, I will not go back to points.
Right. I've played power level before because I like to do the open war. And it's just you can get a field of an army so quickly and you use those cards. And it's for Beer Hammer. Yeah. And it's just more fun.
And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that all power level is equivocal and it's a balanced system. It's not. They are adjusting power level on units now, so it's not like in 8th edition where whatever their power level when they came out was what it is. They are adjusting it, so they are trying to keep it somewhat balanced. But power level is so much easier. You and I can take 2 minutes to make a list, bam, you're done. There's none of that. Well, I need 2 extra points somewhere so I can fit a power fist in, but now I need to take points over here and put it over here. And you don't do that. It's 5 power for that unit, done.
Right.
5 power for that unit, done. 3 for that one, done. Chaos spawns 1, done. And you can make a list like that.
Right.
And in Crusade, you make a roster. So it's kind of like Kill Team. So our Kill Team fans out there, if you like the idea of a roster, that's how Crusade works. So you create a roster, and then you and I play a game, and then we say we're going to play a 25 power, 50 power, or whatever. We can't play more than the person with the lowest power level can field. So if I've been playing Crusade for a long time and I have 200 power, but you just started yours and you only have 50 power, we can't play them more than 50 power.
Right.
So you're not having somebody that's been playing for a long time just coming in stomping people.
So how big is your roster then?
It starts out at 50.
Oh, it starts out at 50. But then when you actually play a mission, the mission might call for 25 power?
It could.
Okay.
It depends. And so what you would do in that case is that you and your opponent then decide, I have 50 and you have 50. Do we want to play a 50 power or do we want to do a 25 power? And then you agree. And Crusade has rules for every one of those. So, you know, we talked earlier about narrative gaming in 8th edition. 8th edition had 1 mission for narrative gaming. That was it.
Right. Until the campaign books.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But the core itself had 1 mission. The core book now has 3 missions for 25 and 6 for every 50 thereafter or 25 thereafter. Because they're like, so it's 25, 50, 100, and then 200 or whatever the case is. It breaks up, and it listed, there's like a breakdown step that tells you how to go through it. But then there's 6 missions for all those other power level things. And so, and then the other thing the game does to balance out is that, say I've been playing Crusade for a long time, and I bought Warlord traits, and I bought relics, and I have guys that's leveled up. That does not affect your power level, but it affects your Crusade level. And so if my Crusade level is higher than your level, then we see what the difference is of those Crusade levels. And if you're just starting out at 50, it's 0. But hypothetically, say I've been playing for a while and I got guys that are leveled up, and my Crusade level is 6. So I'm 6 higher than you. We divide that, it becomes 3. You get a 3 extra CP to play your game.
Okay.
So it tries to, kind of like Blood Bowl has inducements, where, you know, if you're too high gold rating, then they're like, well, here's a little bit extra to buy some other stuff to help you out. This game system does that with command points.
Right. So that's pretty. So I think that while I've yet to play it, and I said earlier in the show, I think that I'm gonna like this more as my 9th edition. Hell, I might like 9th edition once the codex comes out. But as the state of 40K of the time of this recording, if you're not a Space Marine or Death Card player, then you're not playing 9th. You know, so it would be cool to see how it does seem that the narrative game, it's almost as though like the power level of Astra Militarum in a match play isn't great as far as tier wise, but in a narrative sense, it can be so badass. You know what I mean? While Space Marine will still find success because they're just so strong in units, but you're underrepresented lower tiers. It seems as though just come over to this playground and play with these toys, you know, while 9th edition becomes Horus Heresy for all intents and purposes.
Well, like, all right, so we're talking about IG specifically. Let's look at it this way. If we are playing by points, your Leman Russ starts out at your base points, and then every weapon thereafter adds up points. And so you can have a Leman Russ that went from, you know, 160 points or whatever it starts out to 250, 300 points. And so in a match play scenario, the more stuff you add on it, the more it's worth, or the more of your pie it takes up. And so you're hesitant to keep adding extra weapons on it. But in narrative play, your power level of your Leman Russ is the power level of your Leman Russ.
Right.
And so you're like, fucking throw all the last cannons on there. I'm gonna
right.
smoke bomb, 100 killer missiles, whatever. At the end of the day, it's still worth the 7 power, 8 power, whatever you started out with. So I think in that instance, your IG or Astra Militaire, I'm sorry, may get a bit of a boon because your heavy weapon squads, when you start out with your heavy weapon squad, here's your base cost, and if your heavy bolters are here, and then your autocannons are here, and your last cannons are here, but you're like, you know what? I'm gonna throw last cannons on all those mofo's. Guess what? It's still 3 power.
Right, absolutely, 100%. And that was the cool thing. Well, that was the cool thing about power is that you could take those badass things that were preventative in the past, like a demolisher, las cannon, plasma cannon, Lehman Russ, which would be through the roof, and go ahead and play it instead of having to run naked, the cheap, which is the base Lehman Russ, which is the base battle cannon, and heavy bolters all the way around. But it's Max says that I enjoyed the little bit of Crusade I did play, but like other systems, it can be abused. Some safe measure rules in place to prevent abuse. So during the Sonora campaign, some of the heroes. Well, you said I didn't see anybody that was overpowered, but that was my first taste of you can't wound me on anything but force, which is now the transhuman, which is fucking everywhere now in 9th edition. That gives you the feel badsies. And I think things that give you feel badsies are unhealthy for this game. And I'm talking about the other character. Like I landed my dice, and I got the wound needed, but I can't wound you for some reason. This battle cannon and strength 10 can't wound you on a 4+. It's feel badsies, but I didn't, but that's for the rules team. Safe measure rules. I think everybody was, for the most part, having one hero that was a total badass wasn't that bad.
Well, I think in this type of gaming we have to consider that. Well, let me preface this statement here that this comment does not represent Red Star or Ricky Bobby Inc. This is the express views of Will Lansden.
Oh
full
shit!
Stop.
He's about to get canceled.
This is one of those type of things that you can't control it, but you can. And the way you do that is by, one, you find people that play the way you think the game should be played. This is not us going to Alamo or whatever and everybody's game within the frame of the rules. This is one of those things that's like, all right, Max, I see what you're doing there, and I appreciate what you're trying to do, but you're being an asshole. You took your Avatar of Cain, and now you're adding all this stuff on there, and your Avatar of Cain is now your hero, and he's unkillable, and it's a bit of a dick thing.
You know what?
And
how many things, though, would be fixed if you could talk to another person and just go, hey, man, half of the things in this world, if you just confront people and tell them, how, you know what I mean, would be avoided. But I do see what you mean, yeah.
Agreed. I think that's one of the things that, of course, nobody else is going to dictate what your list is, but the core group that you're playing with are going to be the ones that you're playing with, and you need to understand that this type of gaming is about fun. It is not about winning. And I'm not saying that you have to downplay your list or take subpar lists to be able to play, but if you are min-maxing, then that's something very different. And Mike and I talked about in our show notes and when we did our show prep about Dungeons & Dragons. And Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 has this stigma that is the worst edition ever because you could have these broken characters and all this, that. And while that is true, it is not necessarily a given. Just because you play 3.5 doesn't mean every character was going to be broken. That was up to the DM and the group to say, yes, we're going to allow you to use 11 different books to make your character that certain things interacted where it could become somewhat broken and very meta. But like Mike said, that was a conversation between you and your group then said, now, Mike, you're being a dick by saying that your tanks can't be wounded unless it's a 4+, and that's kind of shitty because you're a tank, not a hero,
Yeah,
and you got 12 wounds compared to my 5 wounds, and it's just kind of shitty.
right. I
But
think that people people will get it. You know what I mean? Um, because the other people around won't do that. If a majority of the people, you know what I mean? So if a guy does that, he will just psychologically fall in line. You know what I mean? And as a DM, like you said, like I DM, I play D&D, but for some reason I have to DM. I don't know why. I don't know why. And I let you make your character. I don't want to put any restrictions. That doesn't mean that you get somebody level 5. He's got a +5 +6, and I'm just fucking rolling my eyes, right? Because my encounters feature goblins and kobolds. You know what I mean? This son of a bitch is gonna max. He's gonna hit all the time. +5 +6. You just roll your eyes. But you know what, man? Um, it always works out. It always works out. Somebody he'll get it. He'll get it.
yeah, and if you have that guy that doesn't get it, I think that naturally the group will self-select out. That person may not get games. And I hate to be that guy and be like, well, he's just being a jerk. But if you got a guy that's being an asshole in every game, then people are gonna just not want to play that guy.
You know, and let's also like in the practical world of like how it actually happened. I played my buddy Lance, who's a lovely man. He had a hive guard who couldn't be overwatched. A hive tyrant, excuse me, couldn't be overwatched. I think he had the 4+ also. And anyways, he was scary and pretty built to kill, right? Um, I mean, yeah, he came in and wrecked some stuff, but I mean, I blew him off the table. It's a guy. It's not, it's not. It's just an HQ. And when we played the campaign rules, yes, you could take one power, but you couldn't take every power, every upgrade couldn't come from the make your guy insane list. There was some support
Right.
list and then some heroic lists, heroic tier type things and stuff like that. So you know what, it all worked out. But Lance said I'm currently not playing ninth until the codex drops. Who knows when that'll be? Amen. Um, I'm interested in
Well,
yeah.
Max plays Eldar specifically, so with Drukhari coming out, we may not see Eldar for some time. I hope that's not the case because I think Eldar definitely are one of the ones that need a new book. But and plus, I think honestly, and now because we're talking about narrative gaming and that's my jam, seeing a Eldar narrative thing come out for Crusade for them specifically would be so badass to be able to say, here's my Exarch character, and then I leveled him up, and he joined the Striking Scorpion,
Right.
or the cult or whatever they call them.
He becomes
You know,
some
and being
Phoenix
able
Lord.
to add
Yeah.
a couple extra rules, that would to me would be badass. Or here's my hero caster or whatever, and she leveled up, and I'm gonna make her a Howling Banshee now. She's gonna go to the Howling Banshee school and get her little screamer mask and sword. And I would like, to me, that's badass.
Yeah, that is badass. Well, and you could say that with with every faction. It's like the Gene Stealer cult mutate. You know what I mean? He mutates or has third generation kids and stuff like that ends up finally becoming a Primarch. So in that case, you would birth the eventual leader of your of your rebellion, which would be freaking badass. Um, Question. So this campaign book that's about to come out is centered story-wise on a few particular factions, but the missions can be used by anybody to play narratively, correct?
Yeah, so they come out with a little bit of information today, as Aaron had mentioned earlier in the community post, and they gave a little bit of information. Of course, it's vague because it's GW, and we learned to expect that after a while. But they are specifically in that. So right now in Crusade, the games are only generically linked. They're not. There's no real. If this happens in this game, this is going to happen the next game, like we did in the Sonora. But that may happen in the Chardon campaign because it specifically say that those are going to be linked games.
Uh-huh.
And so we don't know how that's going to look yet. GW's come some stuff in the past, and to be fair, they have been half-hearted attempts at best, and it takes a little bit of tweaking on you and your group to come up with something that's really usable. Hopefully that's not the case in this. It does follow the Death Guard, Cult Mechanicus Metallica, House Raven for the Imperial Knights, and the Cult of Strife for Drakari are their focus in the narrative. But yeah, they said that there's going to be stuff in there that's going to be specific for doing the campaigns in that. I have to assume it's going to be like Vigilus.
Yeah, see, Vigilus was okay. See, Vigilus narratively was badass because it's like it's a battle for the world and everyone's invited. Narratively, I mean, it is narrative, but I'm talking story-wise, narratively. But at the same time, when you played it, your guys kind of felt like it made sense for you. The Astra Militarum were there because they're the first contact, planetary defense. The Space Marines come in for reinforcements. The Genestealer Colts were creating an uprising. Chaos descended because they wanted something. Orcs were in the Badlands already, freaking circling around. You know what I mean? And
Vigilus was a masterpiece.
Yeah.
And I know people have their opinions on Vigilus, but the 2 books that came out for Vigilus, in my opinion, as somebody that this is my jam, and I've been doing this for a long time, Vigilus was freaking masterful. Hands down, the best narrative thing that's come out of GW for campaigns, for stuff like that. And I will go so far as to say ever. I know they got the Iatera stuff that came out. There was the Fate of Connor, which was a fucking joke. But Vigilus was great. It was gold.
Yeah. They need to do something like that or like a series of books. And who knows, this could be I think it's Chardon. It could be the first at the end of 9th, where you look back and like, oh, this all happened in a sector or whatever.
And with Chardon, they did imply that it was going to be a series of books, that this was their focus for this one, but the other ones will focus elsewhere. So they did say also that there's going to be Crusade stuff in the book, stuff specifically for Typhus's campaign, the Cold Strife or whatnot. But they're also coming out with another book specifically for Crusade. And I'm going to bring it up here because I am unprepared. The Plague Purge. And this is another mission pack. So it's one of those small little binder things that they came out with. And this is going to be specifically for Crusade. So more relics, more stuff like that. This one also seems to be centric around Death Guard. It doesn't say specifically for Typhus like Chardon is. It says it includes 24 Crusade missions.
Jesus, that's a lot.
And there's already 21 in the book, and most of them are great, and they're going to be like really weird things, and it's not things that you would think of like, I'm going to a tournament and my objective is to hold this. Like, some of these things are like, you're raising
right,
banners or box flags or
some
whatever.
Some of them are just get the convoy to the other side of the table. Yeah.
And there specifically is a mission for that, just like the mission you were talking about we did with the Sonora, where the objective is to get as much of your stuff off your opponent's table edge as possible. Not, I'm going to kill as much stuff or I'm going to hold as many objectives. It's literally to not die and move your stuff off the table.
Right. You know what?
So for some things, like with my Death Guard, that's a little bit harder than others. But I played that mission and won with my Death Guard.
You know what's funny is I used to love in 8th Maelstrom. And the reason I did was what's going on? Did I freeze? Like my camera froze.
Yeah, you're froze a little bit. We can still hear you though. You're good.
Okay. The reason I love the Maelstrom, my stupid looking fat face. I need to eat some. I need to eat some salads. That's the worst looking freeze frame I've ever seen. Anyways, I will eat a salad as soon as we're done with this production. I'm just gonna go grab a head of lettuce and crush it. The Maelstrom missions, you flipped cards, and that was your objective. And the reason I like that is so 9, you hold one, hold more. You got secondaries, and you got to go and do that. This one, you had no idea what your objectives were. You flipped it, and then you had to go get that. It's kind of like in these narrative missions. I have no idea what's in store for me. It's just that is a really cool way to play the game. Some will be better than others, but it's going to have those Warhammer moments that bring you back. They're like, I remember one time I played this one where I had to get my warlord, you know what I mean, to go to the right top their deployment zone, and then he had to raise a flag, you know what I mean, and it was like freaking something out of Platoon, like in freaking William Dafoe trying to get to the chopper and he's getting shot in the back. It was something, you know what I mean? It's just like those Warhammer narrative moments.
You know where I got those missions from? The Urban Conquest box set that nobody plays.
Oh yeah, I remember
and
those.
I thought that was a great expansion. Unfortunately, it didn't get a lot of popularity, but there was a lot of very cinematic type things. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you're talking about Platoon and stuff. A lot of those missions are meant to be cinematic, not who was the better army. It's like, if you're the one guy, storming the castle or, charging up the hill, you may die.
Well, we haven't. I think. Hold on, everyone. I think we're having some technical.
All right, so it looks like Mike.
Yep. I think we're having some technical difficulties. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we're good. I hear you. You're back.
Okay, sorry about that, folks. I think the reason my webcam went out is I had a little internet hiccups. Let's push forward as professionals.
So one of the other things that I wanted to mention, because I'm reading the article here for the Crusade mission pack that's going to be coming out for Plague Purge. The 24 missions, 6 for each game size, and it says along with rules for the Plague Purge Crusades and a suite of agendas, requisitions, and stratagems, which is great. So one thing we didn't mention was the agendas. So in Crusade, instead of having secondary missions, they have what's called agendas, and it's you pick 2 agendas or based off the size of the game, and then you go and you say that I'm going to pick so many agendas, and the agendas are going to be what's going to give extra experience to your unit. So you're not necessarily getting more points for winning the game, but it's going to be like whoever kills the opponent's warlord is going to get additional experience, or whoever erects the most Vox towers gets extra experience. And so it's about advancing your units rather than getting bonus points to win the game.
Right.
Because Crusade's all about the long term, not this one game.
Right. Well, like you always do, you're like you're like the Pied Piper of. All I have to do is turn my head right and look at all my Crisis Protocol because of you. And I'm excited. This is going to be the 4th time I've mentioned this, but I think those of us who feel the sting or are not happy with where your army fits in a take and hold more centered 9th edition, armies that aren't MEQ is what I'm saying, like myself, my IG. I think you have a home in this narrative 40K. And the thing that makes me optimistic is that they have not only given the time to put it in the core rulebook, the Crusade rules, they're supporting it with its own campaign things. To be fair, they did that in 8th also. But the fact that Crusade is actually in the 8th edition straight up rulebook, and every codex is essentially has Crusade dedicated to it, makes me optimistic that I'm still going to be able to play Warhammer, even though my faction might not fit in with the match play direction that Warhammer's going now. If anything, like psychologically, this conversation we've had today made me feel more optimistic about Warhammer, gets me more excited about Warhammer, because I'll be frank, I don't want to play another faction, even though at the beginning we talked about Space Wolves and how I was pricing them out. I don't want to play another faction. I'm an Astra Mill player. I want to be the guy who's known as the Astra Mill player, and I just didn't see where I fit in this edition. But it seems as though there was an answer to that already waiting for me. You know what I mean? We got to get a campaign going, and I think the people that play Astra Mill, the people that play the toughness 3, 4 up, 5 up armor save, are going to have a home in the narrative version of Warhammer.
I definitely agree. I think that this is one of those things where you should not count out your army because you don't have a new codex. And of course, the armies with the newer codexes are going to have a slight advantage. But that's not to say that your army will not do well. I have played my Genestealer cults in this, and they don't have a new book. And I was able to do well against some of these armies that were playing out of the Space Marine Codex, just because their playstyle was so much different. Crusade, a lot of their stuff is based around actions and not necessarily holding objectives themselves. Right. And your IG, where you have so many extra units, because when you perform an action in 9th edition, you're essentially taking yourself out of the game.
Right, out of the round. Yeah. Yeah.
But by having so many IG squads, you can dedicate guys to go, well, I'm going to erect this box tower or defile this banner or whatever the case may be, and still be in the game because you have so many more units to still keep putting pressure on your opponent to capture objectives, and also to stop them from performing the same actions that you're trying to perform. So, and with that said, one of the other good things about this is that you get to select your agendas. So your agendas that's going to give you bonus experience and erecting those box towers and things like that. You get the agency to decide on how that works because you pick those things. You get to get the advancements to your characters that is going to best benefit you, and you get some agency in deciding on how your army is going to play moving forward through your advancements, through your warlord traits and things like that. And then once your book does come out, once that IG book does come out, you're going to have things that are in there that are specific for you for Crusade, or hopefully if you get a campaign book, there's going to have things in there specifically for you for Crusade to be able to be like, you know what, my guy is now a foot commander, but now I'm going to upgrade him and now he's a tank commander.
Right.
And you'll be able to have that agency to and as I've said before, to design the fluff of that character and tell that character's story.
Yeah, that's definitely given me more optimism about what I put as my number one game, which is 40K, and what I have the largest collection of. So while I love Crisis Protocol and I love me some Blood Bowl, every time I go out to play, and my giant collection that I've put so much time and effort into stays on the shelf at home, it doesn't go to the store with me, get a little bit of cognitive dissonance there. But my man, let me go ahead, please.
No, I was going to say, I think that's a perfectly reasonable response, and I have been on that end myself on multiple occasions, but I think that this type of play, if you get the right people, and I'm not saying this, narrative play is not for everybody. I'm not going to sit here and be like, you know what, David V, stop going to all these tournaments, come over to narrative play. It's not for everybody. It's not balanced. It's not necessarily equivocal, but with the right group of people, I think that this will be the most fun that you have ever had in Warhammer.
Right.
In my opinion. That's not a Red Star opinion. That's Will, my little hillbilly self, saying, take a chance on this type of play, and it'll be like nothing you have ever played before.
Yeah, man. I'm pumped. I am pumped. And I hope that the people that watch this can kind of take some of that away. And we have in the past, as our group, already illustrated how much fun it can be. And now that Warhammer themselves, or the Games Workshop themselves, is giving us the tools to make that more deep, it's going to means it's the next campaign that we do is going to be even that more exciting, more in depth, more awesome. Because we were running out of just one the chapter approved, right? That's it, and that's it.
Yeah, it was just the chapter approved. That was it.
Yeah. So now we're gonna have campaign books. We're gonna have codex specific Crusade stuff, and then of course the Crusade rules in the main rule book. I think we're looking at a very healthy narrative scene, and I know that the next narrative campaign that Red Star runs is gonna be just a massive success. Let me tell you something, Will. We've gone an hour and 10 minutes, the fastest hour and 10 minutes we've ever done on this show.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, man. This what a great topic. I thought like I said, man, it did a lot for me. I was just feel badsies, and now I feel like, there's the Warhammer I want is not where I was looking. If that makes any sense.
I agree, man. I was there, and I mentioned earlier, I had been playing this game for 15 years, and prior to the Sonora campaign that we were doing last March, I had grown stale, and I had considered multiple times maybe I need to move on, maybe I need to try something different, because Warhammer just wasn't doing it for me. And I'm not here to crap on match play or tournament players. I used to do that. David and I have went all over Texas playing games with Pete and Meat and some of these other guys. I have been to Houston, Dallas, and all these other places playing competitive gaming. And that's all fine and dandy if that's your thing. But when I started doing this narrative gaming in earnest and building my own campaigns and writing my own rules and things like that, it opened up a whole new way of playing for me. And I had way more fun than I did going to Dallas and to Houston and to all these other places. And those are great guys. Don't get me wrong. They're great people, and I had a lot of great times playing those folks. But playing this narrative thing has opened up that part of my lizard brain where as we talked about before, I cut my teeth in D&D. And now with this, I get to combine those two types of playing, both my storytelling and my dice rolling, competitive playing parts of my brain are combined in this one mode.
Yeah. Awesome, man. You got any last minutes, brother?
No, I think I've said it all at this point. I'm just going to be repeating myself. I think that the best thing I can do is just encourage you to give it a shot and have fun. Sometimes it's a lot of fun to take these shitty units that don't do so well in a game. I got a Plague Hope that I take in my campaign games regularly because I think it's cool that my Chaos Lord of Contagion, or so my Death Guard Lord of Contagion has that as his little pet. And it's not the most optimal unit. It's not going to kill the most things. But in my mind, that story that I'm writing in my mind, it's a pretty cool thing.
Hell yeah.
So
man.
Give it a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us for another edition of Red Star Roundtable. And we will see you guys on, we do this every other week. So not next week.
Every other week.
Yeah.
2 weeks from today.
Yes, sir. Everybody have a good night. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for coming out.